The neighborhood looked calm from the outside. It's the kind of place where lawns were always trimmed and mailboxes lined up in neat rows. Most people believed it was peaceful, but behind that calm surface, rules controlled almost every small detail. The community was managed by a homeowners association that claimed it existed to protect property values and keep things orderly. In reality, many residents felt watched more than helped. The homeowner lived there for several years and kept to himself. He paid his dues on time, followed the rules, and rarely spoke at HOA meetings. He worked long hours, came home tired, and preferred quiet evenings over neighborhood drama. His house was clean, his yard maintained, and his garage door stayed closed most of the time. He never gave anyone a reason to complain. The garage, in particular, was something he valued. It wasn't just a place to park his car. It was organized carefully, with tools on the walls and storage boxes stacked neatly. Everything inside followed HOA rules. There were no commercial signs, no noise, no illegal use. Still, the garage became the center of attention for the wrong person. One HOA board member had built a reputation in the neighborhood. She believed rules were not just guidelines, but weapons to use whenever she felt someone stepped out of line. Many residents avoided her. Some smiled politely and kept walking. Others whispered stories about warnings she issued without proper checks. She took pride in enforcing rules, even when no one asked her to. She noticed patterns others ignored. She noticed when a car stayed parked too long. She noticed when trash bins were put out a few hours early. And she noticed when the homeowner's driveway stayed empty for days. When she saw the garage doors closed every day and no lights on at night, her curiosity turned into suspicion. Around that time, the homeowner was planning a vacation. It wasn't sudden or careless. He had worked for years without taking a long break. The trip was meant to clear his mind and give him rest. Before leaving, he double-checked everything. Doors locked, windows secured, garage closed tight, cameras active. He trusted technology more than people. He didn't announce his trip to neighbors or the HOA. He didn't see any reason to. His house was his private space, and his absence broke no rules. He left quietly, early in the morning, with luggage loaded and plans already set. Days passed, and the neighborhood noticed his absence. The empty driveway became a topic of quiet discussion. Some neighbors assumed he was traveling. Others didn't care. But the HOA woman cared very much. She walked past his house more than once during her daily rounds. Each time the closed garage bothered her more. She began to imagine problems where none existed. In her mind, an unused garage was suspicious. Maybe it was being used for storage against the rules. Maybe it was hiding something unapproved. She convinced herself that silence meant guilt. Instead of checking the HOA guidelines carefully, she relied on her own assumptions. She told herself she was protecting the community. In reality, she was feeding her need for control. The more she thought about it, the more restless she became. She mentioned the house during casual conversations with neighbors. She hinted that something didn't feel right. Most people nodded politely, but didn't engage. They had learned that agreeing with her often led to more trouble. As the days went on, her frustration grew. She expected the homeowner to return quickly. When he didn't, her imagination filled the gap. She convinced herself that action was needed. Someone had to check that garage, she thought. Someone had to step in. What she didn't know was that every step she took toward that decision was being quietly prepared for. Consequences. The calm neighborhood was about to experience a situation no one expected. All because one person couldn't respect boundaries. And while she believed she was in control, the homeowner, miles away on vacation, was completely unaware that his quiet absence had just made him a target. As the homeowner's vacation days passed, the HOA woman's mind became more restless. Every time she walked by the empty driveway or saw the closed garage, her thoughts grew louder. In her mind, she wasn't just seeing an empty house. She was seeing a potential problem, something that could affect the community's rules. She imagined violations she could document, fines she could issue, or reports she could file. The lines between reality and imagination started to blur. Her obsession grew quietly at first. She mentioned the empty garage to neighbors during casual conversations, framing it as a concern for the neighborhood's safety and aesthetic. She said things like, "I'm not sure what's going on in that garage. It seems unusual." Most neighbors smiled politely but said nothing, sensing her habit of exaggerating small matters. They had seen her take small observations and turn them into serious claims before. She began to check the house more often, not just walking past on her usual rounds, but stopping to observe the garage, the driveway, and even the mailbox. Every detail was scrutinized. She imagined the homeowner breaking rules in ways that were impossible because he had always followed them carefully. In her mind, the closed garage became a symbol of secrecy and defiance. Every day it stood shut was proof of wrongdoing. She spent hours thinking about what could be inside. Maybe it was a storage of things the HOA did not approve, and maybe it was a hobby that violated community rules, or maybe, in her mind, it was something more suspicious. The more she imagined, the more she convinced herself she had a duty to act. In her mind, she was protecting everyone, not realizing she was crossing invisible boundaries. Other neighbors tried to tell her to let it go. "People go on vacations," they said. "The garage is fine." But she ignored their words. In her view, those neighbors didn't understand the importance of rules. She believed she was the only one capable of noticing potential violations. She kept her focus tight, thinking she was doing the right thing. Every day she checked the street, waiting for signs that the homeowner was returning. She assumed that as soon as he came back, he would face questions. But until then, she thought it was her responsibility to keep a watchful eye. She started creating a mental plan for what to do if she found evidence of violations. It wasn't just observation anymore. It had become a personal mission. At the same time, she began documenting small things. She took notes about how long the garage stayed closed, how often the driveway remained empty, and the time she walked past the house. Each detail was recorded carefully. She imagined a report that would prove her diligence. In her mind, she was meticulous and fair, but in reality, her assumptions were becoming more extreme. Her thoughts eventually turned to the possibility of entering the garage. She rationalized it by saying that if the homeowner had broken rules, the community needed to know. She thought about opening the door to inspect, imagining herself as a responsible enforcer of order. Each day, the idea felt more urgent. The emptiness of the garage seemed like a challenge to her authority, yet she did not act immediately. Fear and uncertainty lingered. She worried about legal consequences or confrontation with the homeowner. Still, each day's quiet observation increased her impatience. In her mind, she justified her feelings as responsibility, not overreach. She imagined the praise she would receive from the board if she discovered a violation. She imagined her name being mentioned for diligence. Even though she had no actual evidence of wrongdoing, neighbors noticed her frequent presence and whispered about her determination. Some were amused, some annoyed, but most stayed quiet, knowing she would take offense if questioned. Her obsession started to create tension in the neighborhood. People who once smiled politely now avoided eye contact when she walked by. Meanwhile, the homeowner was far away, enjoying his vacation completely unaware of the growing storm. He was relaxing, exploring new places, and disconnecting from daily routines. Messages from neighbors were occasional and casual, never mentioning the HOA woman's plans. He assumed his home was safe, that the neighborhood was calm, and that his absence was uneventful. Back at the house, the HOA woman's restlessness reached a peak. She imagined scenarios where she discovered illegal storage, unsafe conditions, or violations that could result in fines. Each imagined discovery strengthened her resolve. The empty garage, in her mind, had become a mystery that demanded immediate attention. She began considering practical steps. She thought about how to access the garage without permission. She considered watching the house day and night, waiting for the perfect opportunity. Her imagination created intricate plans for inspection and documentation. She justified her thoughts by convincing herself that no one else would act. She was the only person responsible for protecting the rules. Her obsession created a sense of urgency. She stopped paying attention to other matters. Work, social life, and personal time became secondary. The garage had consumed her focus. The days passed slowly, each one increasing her tension. She began waking up early to check the driveway and garage. Each time she found it closed and empty, her resolve hardened. What started as casual curiosity became a personal mission. She no longer questioned her actions. In her mind, she was doing something important. She believed she was enforcing rules, protecting the neighborhood, and preventing potential chaos. She did not see that her assumptions were completely unfounded, that she was building tension that would soon lead to a confrontation. And so, while the homeowner remained far away, relaxing and enjoying his time, the HOA woman's obsession with the garage grew every day. The quiet neighborhood, once peaceful, was now silently preparing for a storm neither side could have imagined. The stage was being set for a conflict born from assumptions, patience, and a desire for control, all focused on a closed garage and an absent homeowner. The HOA woman had been planning for days. Every step she took in the neighborhood, every glance at the quiet driveway, was a rehearsal in her mind. She imagined opening the garage door, finding proof of violations, and being hailed as a hero by the community. In reality, she had no evidence, no legal authority, no understanding of boundaries, but none of that slowed her determination. She waited for the perfect time. Early mornings seemed ideal because few neighbors were awake and the streets were empty. She carried a small notebook to jot down details, imagining it would serve as evidence. The more she thought about it, the more confident she became. She convinced herself that the homeowner had been negligent or hiding something against HOA rules. In her mind, every detail supported her case, though none of it was true. That morning, the neighborhood was unusually quiet. Birds chirped, a light breeze rustled the leaves, and the sun cast long shadows across the driveways. The homeowner was still miles away, enjoying the freedom of vacation without a care. No one suspected what was about to happen at his house. She approached the property slowly. Almost ceremoniously, her mind filled with imagined authority. She checked the locks on the gate, making sure she could enter without being seen. She peered at the garage door, noting every scratch, every panel, as if they were clues in a mystery only she could solve. She walked around, taking mental notes, rehearsing what she would do next. Her first attempt at the garage was cautious. She tried the handle gently, pretending to look like she had a right to be there. Of course, the door was locked tight, just as the homeowner had ensured before leaving. She tugged slightly, imagining the garage might resist her intrusion like a secret fortress. Her mind raced, crafting excuses for what she planned to do next. Security cameras, hidden and unobtrusive, caught everything. Every movement, every step, every glance toward the garage was recorded. Yet she didn't notice. She felt invisible, justified, and above suspicion. In her mind, she was performing a public service, enforcing the rules that others ignored. She began imagining what could be inside. Perhaps the homeowner was storing unapproved items. Maybe there was clutter that violated the HOA rules, or perhaps in her imagination, something more serious. She thought she had to confirm it herself. Waiting for others to act felt inefficient, and in her mind, she was the only one responsible enough to enforce order. Neighbors who happened to see her walking past felt uneasy. Some whispered to each other, worried that she was crossing lines. Others shook their heads, remembering past instances of her overreach. But most stayed indoors, hoping to avoid confrontation. They knew that speaking up would only fuel her sense of importance. Time passed, and her patience wore thin. The empty driveway seemed to mock her. The closed garage became an obsession. In her mind, she had no choice but to act. She thought carefully about how to open the door without leaving evidence of her intrusion. Every detail, from her shoes to her gloves, was considered. She rehearsed movements, practiced opening imaginary locks, and imagined what the homeowner would say when he returned. Finally, the moment came. No one was outside. The street was empty. She approached the garage door with a mix of excitement and nervous energy. She checked the surroundings one last time, making sure no neighbor could witness her actions. Her heartbeat quickened, her mind flooded with imagined scenarios of authority and recognition. She reached for the door handle with determination. The door didn't budge. Frustration surged, but she convinced herself that she could find another way. She looked around the edges of the garage, testing panels, trying to find a weak point. In her imagination, the garage resisted her not out of security, but because it hid secrets she must uncover. She felt a sense of purpose, thinking she was performing an important duty. What she didn't know was that every movement was recorded. Cameras caught her approach, her attempts to manipulate the door, and even her nervous glances around the neighborhood. These small details, unnoticed by her, were building a case that would soon prove her actions were completely unauthorized. She paused for a moment, thinking about what she would do if she succeeded. She imagined inspecting shelves, counting boxes, reading labels, and finding violations she could report. Each imagined discovery increased her sense of urgency. Her obsession had reached its peak. In her mind, the garage was a mystery that demanded resolution, a puzzle she alone could solve. Meanwhile, the homeowner, far away, continued to relax, oblivious to the mounting tension at home. He checked in occasionally, enjoying simple messages from family and friends, but nothing indicated any trouble. He had no idea that the quiet neighborhood was about to witness a confrontation born from assumptions and obsession. The HOA woman tried several methods, testing the garage door, imagining hidden mechanisms, even gently rocking it to see if it would give. Each failed attempt frustrated her, yet strengthened her resolve. She told herself that determination was key, that persistence would reveal the truth. She ignored the possibility that she had no right to be there, that her assumptions were wrong, and that she was breaking trust and boundaries. Hours passed. The street remained quiet. Every failed attempt increased her obsession. Her mind raced with imagined consequences, both for the homeowner and for herself. She felt a strange mix of fear and excitement, convinced she was right and that her actions were necessary. In her mind, she was performing a duty that others could not comprehend. Finally, she stepped back, frustrated but not defeated. She paused, thinking about what to do next. The homeowner was still away, and she was alone with her obsession. Every quiet moment in the neighborhood seemed magnified. Every shadow, a potential witness. Every sound, a warning. Her actions were building toward a climax she had imagined for days in her mind. The garage had become a symbol of control and mystery. She believed that if she could open it, she would restore order, enforce rules, and gain recognition. What she didn't realize was that her actions were entirely unnecessary. The garage had always followed the rules. The homeowner had done nothing wrong, and her obsession had transformed an ordinary house into a stage for imagined drama. The day ended without the garage opening, but the tension remained. She retreated for the night, convinced she would try again the next day. Her mind replayed every movement, every glance, every imagined discovery. She could not rest, for the empty driveway and closed garage demanded her attention. Little did she know, her obsession, her impatience, and her assumptions were being documented. Every step, every attempt, every imagined justification was quietly building a record that would soon reveal the truth, that her actions were unauthorized, unnecessary, and driven entirely by imagination and a desire for control. And so, the quiet neighborhood remained unaware of the drama unfolding in plain sight. The homeowner continued his vacation far away, enjoying peace that he could not imagine would be disturbed by the obsessive attention of one determined HOA woman. When the homeowner returned from his vacation, he was relaxed and refreshed, carrying a suitcase full of memories and souvenirs. The streets seemed the same, the neighborhood quiet and orderly, and nothing initially hinted at the tension that had built up in his absence. He parked his car in the driveway, unlocked the front door, and stepped inside with a sense of relief. It had been a long trip, and he was ready to unwind. The house was exactly as he had left it. Furniture in place, windows closed, doors locked. Everything seemed normal until he remembered to check the garage. He pressed the remote, and the door opened smoothly. He stepped inside, expecting the familiar sight of neatly organized tools, boxes stacked in order, and a car parked to the side. Everything appeared normal at first glance, but then he noticed something unusual. Small disturbances in the arrangement of some boxes, faint marks on the floor, subtle signs that someone had been there. Nothing significant, but enough to raise concern. He checked the security cameras next. What he saw made his stomach tighten. There was footage of someone entering the driveway repeatedly, lingering near the garage, and attempting to manipulate the door. The person was careful not to break anything, but the intrusion was clear. He recognized the HOA woman immediately, the same person known in the neighborhood for overstepping boundaries. Every movement, every glance, and every attempt at intrusion was recorded in detail. Rather than reacting impulsively, he took a deep breath. He understood the importance of handling this correctly. There was evidence now, undeniable proof of someone crossing the line. He began compiling everything, reviewing the footage meticulously, making sure he had a clear record. He noted the dates, times, and actions, creating a comprehensive account that could be used if needed. Next, he contacted the HOA formally. He wrote a calm, precise letter outlining the situation, attaching screenshots and video links. He explained that his privacy had been violated, that the actions were unauthorized, and that they had caused unnecessary stress. He emphasized that his property had always complied with HOA rules, and that the intrusion was based on false assumptions. The letter was professional, factual, and free of anger. Designed to ensure that the HOA board could not ignore the evidence, the response from the HOA board was mixed. Some members were shocked by the footage, unable to deny what had occurred. Others seemed hesitant, aware of the political implications of confronting one of their own. But the evidence was clear, and slowly the board realized they had a serious situation on their hands. The HOA woman had acted without authority, ignored proper procedures, and violated the homeowner's privacy. The homeowner didn't stop there. He spoke with neighbors discreetly, without turning the issue into gossip. He explained that the cameras had caught someone overstepping boundaries, emphasizing the importance of privacy and rule following. Neighbors who had witnessed the woman's frequent visits were not surprised, but seeing the proof validated their concerns. Quiet conversations began to circulate, making it clear that the HOA woman's behavior had been excessive. Meanwhile, the HOA woman was unaware of the growing awareness of her actions. She continued her daily routines, unaware that her attempts had been documented. She imagined herself as diligent and responsible, never realizing that her obsession had been captured in vivid detail. Her authority, which she had assumed was unchallenged, was about to be questioned publicly. The homeowner decided to take additional precautions. He installed new alerts on the garage door, ensuring that any future attempts would trigger instant notifications. He checked locks, updated security settings, and reinforced his privacy measures. This was not out of fear, but from a desire to prevent any repeat of the situation. He wanted to maintain calm and control, ensuring that his home remained a safe and private space. The HOA board eventually called a meeting to discuss the incident. The homeowner presented his evidence clearly, without confrontation, allowing the facts to speak for themselves. The video footage left no room for doubt. The board members discussed consequences, accountability, and the importance of respecting homeowner boundaries. They realized that allowing such behavior unchecked could lead to legal issues and undermine the credibility of the HOA itself. In the meeting, the HOA woman tried to defend her actions, claiming she was concerned about rules and the community, but her defense faltered under the weight of video evidence. Every claim she made about protecting the neighborhood was overshadowed by the reality of unauthorized intrusion. The board reminded her of the legal and ethical responsibilities of her position and emphasized that personal assumptions could not justify violations of privacy. The homeowner remained calm throughout. He avoided making personal attacks or engaging in emotional arguments. His focus was on evidence, procedure, and resolution. This approach not only strengthened his position but also highlighted the contrast between responsible behavior and the HOA woman's obsession. Neighbors and board members alike recognized the homeowner's calm and rational handling of a tense situation. As the meeting concluded, it was clear that consequences would follow. The HOA woman was formally reprimanded, and her ability to enforce rules without oversight was restricted. The board implemented clearer policies for inspections, notifications, and homeowner interactions, ensuring that such incidents could not occur again. The homeowner's actions had set a precedent, reinforcing privacy and proper protocol in the community. In the days that followed, the neighborhood returned to its quiet routine. The homeowner's garage remained untouched, organized, and compliant with all rules. The HOA woman, though still present in the community, faced limits on her authority and a tarnished reputation. Neighbors who had once tolerated her overreach now felt confident that boundaries were respected and that intrusive behavior would not be ignored. The homeowner reflected on the incident. With a sense of relief and accomplishment, he understood that calm, evidence-based action had prevented escalation. He had maintained privacy, enforced boundaries, and influenced the HOA to implement stronger rules. The experience reinforced the value of patience, rational thinking, and proper documentation when facing unfair challenges. Through careful handling, the homeowner turned a stressful situation into a lesson in authority, responsibility, and the importance of respecting personal space. The neighborhood learned that rules exist to guide, not to oppress, and that assumptions without evidence can lead to conflict. The HOA woman's actions, driven by obsession rather than fact, had backfired, leaving her facing the consequences while the homeowner regained peace and control over his home environment. After the HOA board meeting, the homeowner felt a sense of relief he hadn't experienced in years. The tension that had built up over the past weeks began to ease. The HOA woman, once confident in her self-appointed authority, was now facing the reality of her actions. Her reputation in the neighborhood had suffered. Her ability to act unchecked had been curtailed by the board. Neighbors began to notice a change in the dynamic. People who had previously avoided eye contact now exchanged polite greetings with the homeowner. Conversations that had been tense due to her overreach became lighter, and the community started to regain its calm. The homeowner, however, didn't stop at just restoring his own sense of peace. He wanted to ensure the situation would not repeat for anyone else. He worked with the HOA to establish clearer guidelines for inspections and communications. Notices would be sent in advance, and no board member would have the authority to enter a property without proper approval. These new rules reassured neighbors, reinforcing boundaries and clarifying responsibilities. The homeowner's experience had become a catalyst for positive change in the community. The HOA woman, on the other hand, struggled to adjust. Her usual assertiveness was limited by the board's restrictions. She found herself questioned more frequently, monitored more closely, and unable to enforce rules based solely on her assumptions. The community had learned to recognize the difference between responsible oversight and obsessive interference. Her influence was diminished. She faced social repercussions as neighbors now viewed her with skepticism. Despite the fallout, the homeowner maintained a calm demeanor. He avoided gloating or making personal attacks. His focus remained on maintaining order and privacy, not punishing the HOA woman. This approach earned him respect from other residents and even some board members. He had demonstrated that patience, evidence, and rational action were more effective than confrontation and anger. Life gradually returned to normal. The homeowner continued to maintain his property meticulously, ensuring that rules were followed not out of fear, but out of respect for the neighborhood. He enjoyed the restored quiet and privacy of his home. Knowing that the lessons learned would prevent future misunderstandings, the HOA woman, frustrated and embarrassed, realized that her attempts to control others had backfired. Her obsession with the garage had led to public exposure, restrictions on her authority, and a tarnished reputation. Neighbors who had once stayed silent began to share their observations about her overreach, reinforcing the lessons learned. She became cautious. Aware that her actions could no longer go unchecked, the homeowner's experience became a subtle reminder to the community about the importance of respecting boundaries and following proper procedures. He had shown that privacy and rights matter and that unauthorized actions, no matter how well-intentioned they seem, could lead to consequences. The story of the garage and the HOA woman spread quietly, serving as a cautionary tale for other neighborhoods. he also took the time to reflect personally. He realized that calmness, patience, and evidence-based action were essential tools when dealing with conflict. He had avoided escalation, protected his property, and influenced the community positively. The incident, though stressful, it strengthened his confidence in handling challenges responsibly. In the end, the garage remained just as it had always been organized, rule-compliant and untouched. The homeowner no longer worried about unauthorized visits or assumptions about violations. The neighborhood had learned the value of respect, proper communication, and the dangers of obsession. The HOA woman's actions, intended to assert control, had only exposed the importance of boundaries and accountability. The community moved forward with a renewed understanding. Policies were clearer, privacy was respected, and the homeowner enjoyed his space without fear. The HOA woman, though still present, had become more cautious, and her attempts to dominate or interfere were curtailed by oversight and awareness. Through this experience, the homeowner had not only protected his property, but it also helped shape a more respectful and balanced neighborhood. The tension, the intrusion, and the obsession of one person had backfired spectacularly, proving that calm, rational, and thoughtful actions could restore order and peace. The story of the garage and the vacation that triggered it remained a quiet lesson for everyone involved, a reminder that assumptions without evidence can lead to conflict, but that responsibility, patience, and respect can resolve it successfully. After the HOA incident, the neighborhood slowly settled into a more balanced dream. Life returned to its usual quiet pace, but the echoes of what had happened still lingered. The homeowner, now more vigilant and confident, found that even small changes made a big difference. He reinforced his routines, making sure that his property remained orderly, yet without letting fear control his life. The garage, which had become the center of drama, now stood as a symbol of calm and control, a reminder of how quickly assumptions could turn into conflict. Neighbors began to notice subtle changes in the community dynamics. Conversations that had been tense or avoided altogether now carried a tone of mutual respect. People spoke more openly about shared responsibilities, property care, and the importance of boundaries. Some shared light jokes about the past incident, but the humor was gentle, acknowledging the lesson learned without cruelty. The homeowner, ever patient and careful, engaged in these conversations only when necessary, preferring to observe and ensure that peace was maintained. Meanwhile, the HOA woman, still present in the neighborhood, was cautious. Her previous attempts to enforce rules on assumption had been curtailed, and she had learned, though reluctantly, that actions carried consequences. She moved through the streets more quietly, aware of neighbors' eyes and of the homeowner's watchful presence. Her behavior had shifted from aggressive overreach to hesitant enforcement, and though she still took pride in rules, she understood the limits of her authority. The homeowner found satisfaction not in conflict, but in seeing a community regain stability. He took small steps to encourage communication without confrontation. Friendly greetings, shared advice on yard maintenance, and casual chats about neighborhood events helped rebuild trust and calm. The focus was now on community cooperation rather than personal battles. Slowly, the fear and tension that had lingered because of obsessive enforcement dissipated. Security measures remained a part of the homeowner's life. Cameras, alerts, organized routines ensured that privacy was maintained without intruding on neighbors or creating an atmosphere of paranoia. These measures were not about mistrust, but about safeguarding personal space. Visitors, friends, and family noticed the care with which the home was maintained and felt welcome. The homeowner's approach became a model of balance between vigilance and normal living. The incident also sparked a subtle cultural shift within the HOA itself. Meetings now included reminders about respecting homeowner boundaries, proper communication, and evidence-based enforcement. Rules were reviewed and clarified to prevent future misunderstandings. Board members learned from the incident, understanding that authority is most effective when paired with fairness and transparency. The homeowner's calm, factual approach had influenced change beyond his own property. On a personal level, The homeowner reflected on what had happened and the lessons it provided. He realized that assumptions and obsessions, even when claimed to be for the greater good, could lead to unnecessary stress and conflict. He valued the importance of calm assessment, careful documentation, and measured action. His experience became a quiet source of wisdom he shared with neighbors who sought advice about conflicts or disputes. Neighborhood life grew lighter and more genuine. The streets, once punctuated by cautious glances and whispered concerns, now carried friendly exchanges and simple, ordinary routines. Children played in yards. Cars came and went without fear of scrutiny. And residents engaged in shared activities like community gardening or small social gatherings. The homeowner participated selectively, enjoying the sense of normalcy without allowing the past incident to dominate his interactions. Even the garage, once the focal point of conflict, became a story to share privately among neighbors. Its organized shelves, neatly stacked boxes, and the absence of drama symbolized careful planning and respect for personal space. Friends visiting the homeowner often admired the order and calm, unaware of how close the community had been to unnecessary confrontation. The homeowner occasionally reflected on how quickly assumptions can escalate and how a few small steps can prevent lasting trouble. The HOA woman, meanwhile, remained part of the neighborhood, but with a diminished presence. Her authority was checked, her actions more transparent, and her attempts at overreach monitored by both board members and neighbors. She had learned, albeit begrudgingly, that control gained through assumptions and intrusion leads to exposure and social isolation. Her previous confidence had given way to caution, and she became a quieter figure within the community. Life, in its ordinary way, continued to unfold. The homeowner traveled occasionally, enjoyed hobbies, and interacted with neighbors when necessary. He balanced privacy with engagement, authority with patience. The neighborhood, having witnessed the fallout from obsessive control, now operated on respect, evidence, and clear communication. Lessons learned from one person's overreach had ripple effects that improved the entire community in the end. The homeowner realized that true peace is not just about protecting property, but also about maintaining trust and balance. The garage, the vacation, and the obsessive HOA woman had all become part of a story of vigilance, calm, and fairness. The experience reinforced his belief that patience, preparation, and careful action are far more powerful than fear, assumption, or impulsive enforcement. The neighborhood settled into a rhythm of quiet understanding, with boundaries respected and peace restored, leaving behind a story that would be quietly remembered as a lesson in community, respect, and common sense. Months had passed since the incident with the HOA woman and the garage, but its lessons were still fresh in the homeowner's mind. Life had returned to a sense of normalcy, yet the experience had left an impression on the way he approached his daily routines, interactions with neighbors, and involvement in the community. He had learned that vigilance was important, but calm and thoughtful actions were even more crucial. The neighborhood itself had changed subtly. Residents were more conscious of boundaries and privacy. Conversations at community gatherings often touched lightly on the importance of mutual respect and following proper procedures. People were more aware that personal assumptions could lead to unnecessary conflict. The homeowner noticed these changes with quiet satisfaction, realizing that one situation, when handled correctly, could create positive change far beyond a single household. The HOA woman, though still part of the community, had adapted her behavior. She no longer took unilateral actions or attempted to inspect homes without notice. Her authority was checked by the board and observed by neighbors. While she still cared deeply about rules, she had learned, sometimes grudgingly, that her methods could not rely on suspicion alone. The homeowner observed these changes from a distance, appreciating the subtle shift in the balance of neighborhood dynamics. Meanwhile, the homeowner focused on his life with renewed energy. He continued to maintain his property carefully, ensuring that his garage and other spaces were organized and compliant with all HOA rules. He installed small improvements, not out of fear of inspection, but out of pride in his home. Friends and family noticed the care and thought he put into every detail. Visits became more relaxed and enjoyable. free from the tension that had previously loomed over the neighborhood. One afternoon, as he worked in the garage, a neighbor approached and struck up a conversation. They spoke about gardening, the local community center, and small projects around the house. The homeowner realized how different the interactions had become compared to the months when tension had dominated. Respectful communication, clear understanding of boundaries, and shared responsibility had replaced fear and assumptions. The neighborhood was slowly becoming more united despite the return to calm. The homeowner never forgot the lessons from the past. He maintained his security systems, not because he expected trouble, but because he understood the importance of preparation. Cameras, motion alerts, and careful organization provided reassurance and peace of mind. He no longer worried constantly about the HOA woman or her assumptions, but he remained aware and ready to act if necessary. His vigilance was balanced with confidence, not fear. He also began sharing small insights with other neighbors in private conversations. Not advice on rules or authority, but lessons about staying calm, documenting interactions, respecting both property and personal boundaries. Many neighbors appreciated the perspective. Some had dealt with similar situations themselves, and they found encouragement in seeing how careful, rational actions could prevent conflict and resolve disputes effectively. Community events started to feel lighter. Barbecues, neighborhood walks, and occasional social gatherings were no longer shadowed by tension. The homeowner sometimes reflected on how quickly situations could escalate when assumptions ruled over evidence. He realized that one person's obsession could cause a ripple effect, but that measured response and clear communication could restore balance. The story of the garage incident, while never formally told in detail, became a quiet reference point for learning and growth.